I'm going to start doing is start recording the call. And so the recording of this call will be available afterwards for you to listen to again every Friday and Saturday night if you're interested. Or you can pass it on to other people in your area. There, I recorded the call. So here's the topics we're going to cover. I'm going to take you through staff resources because I feel like a lot of things I'm showing you are things that I learned on staff resources. I've been doing my job for about 3 years now, a little over 3 years. So there's a lot of helpful things on staff resources if you know where to find them. So we'll go through that a little bit. We're going to go through just very briefly the first and third newsletter email that I send out and show you some helpful links on that. I'll go over a little bit about camping because I know a lot of areas are gearing up for camp. So I'll go over some of the administrative parts of getting ready for camp. And then I'll show you on Concur. I'll start a Concur report and I'll add an expense to it and attach the receipt and go through a little bit of detail on that. And then depending on how the time goes, I might show you how to request a check for a volunteer who paid for something, or if you get a vendor send you an invoice to pay. And then we're going to go through cash flow. So we'll look at expense categories, which applies to Concur and cash flow because those match up very neatly. And then we'll spend probably most of our time on cash flow. And then my hope is to do all that in 30 minutes. So we'll see how that goes. And then have the second half be just for Q&A. Feel free to unmute yourself. You're all muted now, but you can always unmute yourself to interrupt me to ask a question. All right? Sound good? Thumbs up? Cool. So first, let me go over staff and volunteer resources. When you log in, this is the main page you're going to see. And can you see my arrow moving around on the screen? You can, cool. So this main menu bar is probably the most important part of the page. And I'm going to just take you through each tab and talk a little bit about them. Also down here, topics of interest and your favorites. Also has good places that are common that a lot of treasurers and admins will go to. If you ever had an emergency, like let's say during club, there was an injury, or you had a tragedy at school or things like that, this is a great link that links you up to phone numbers at Young Life to call for help on how to handle it as a representative of Young Life, as a representative of Christ. There's an emergency number that's manned 24/7 that you can call in case of an emergency. And Young Life is excellent at helping navigate those things. Benefits is more for staff, but there's some administrative tools. So what I encourage you to do is when you have the time is to go through and just click through some of these links. Some of them should be familiar to you, like the volunteers manager, the staff volunteer roster. If those aren't familiar to you, we can go over those. I probably won't go too deep into those on this call just because of time, but those are two important apps that volunteer areas need to know. And then here, of course, is cash flow, one of my favorites, camping resources, and then other links to various things that you can explore on your own. We're going to go through this blue tab, and I'll just describe a little bit more. So the first one is leader tools, and you can always see where you are, kind of like on a PC, where when you're in files, it'll show you how you got to the file. You can see here we're in staff resources, and I just clicked on leader tools. That's what this is showing. Leader tools is great for tools for planning your clubs, getting ready for camping, running committee meetings. There's also specific types of Young Life that there are special pages for, including small town rural, which I actually was not super familiar with until I was exploring, preparing for this call. So I clicked on small town rural. That was a hyperlink. And takes you to this page that has some helpful links on the history of rural Young Life, what a jumpstart is, some logos you can use when you're advertising for your clubs, and then how to do fundraising, just different links there. So I encourage you to go there. And you can see here, I was on staff resources, I went to leader tools, and then I clicked on small town. That's what that's showing. Next tab over is services. This is, so your area is paying 17% of every dollar that comes in to cover services that Young Life provides for your area to help you run your ministry. These are the departments that are all here for you. So when you click on services, you can see if you have a question about putting on an event, you can go to services and click on event solutions, and there's a whole team. There's no charge to your area that's there ready to help you figure out how to sell tickets to something, how to run an auction, timelines for how to plan things. So this is this is what part of your dollars are paying for. This is a great page to explore. Next over, is mission directory. So you can see that previous one, I was at staff resources and I went to services. Next one, I went to mission directory. Not everybody has access to everything. Like I have access to search. I can look up anybody in the mission by name. So if you ever need to find somebody, say like in Colorado, you can always contact me and I can search for them. Or say you know somebody up in Washington who's an area director and you knew they were in Washougal, but that's all you know, you want to talk to them, you can contact me and I can use this search function. But you do have access to look up phone numbers for the board, for camping and each property. It shows you a map of Young Life so you can see more about the whole plan and setup of Young Life. So that's a good tab. Next is applications. This is probably my most frequently used tab. You can see just the main staff resources to applications. And these are some of these applications you'll use a lot, and some of them you might never use. So I'm going to go down them really quickly. Camp requests you use only in August. This is every year areas choose their top 3 choices for their weeks for the following summer. And when you do that, you use a separate system called Camp Request. In August, I'll send it out a newsletter and talk through how to use that app. Next one down is the camp reservation system. If I had time on this call, I'd go into more detail on that. But that's a good one to explore and try. It's a search engine for looking up the properties and the different camp weeks and who's going. That's a good one to explore and try typing in different numbers and see what you can find. Camp Trip or Camp Trip Manager is what areas use to track credit card payments for camp. We're not going to go through this on this call, but I'll send you a link to a training video about Camp Trip Manager if you haven't used it before. You can find payments in revenue reports, but Camp Trip is a nice, easy way to just look at payments just for that particular camp. The camping, health, and consent form, this is where health forms are tracked. This one, a lot of times, areas might, especially small town areas, might have somebody who's a committee member who's in charge of looking for the health forms. If that's you and you click on this and it tells you you don't have access, contact me and I'll grant you access. A lot of these apps are all automated, so say if you're a team leader, you'll have access to the health consent forms. But if you're a committee member, you don't have access. That's just the default setting. You can always contact me and I can change the setting for you in particular so that you do have access to this. Once you get on it, you can see the list of names and who's completed the health form and who has started the health form. The only thing you don't see is who has not started a health form. So when you're looking at health forms for camp, you always want to have a list of your whole camp, everybody going, alongside this app, the Camping Health and Consent form, because this won't tell you who's going to camp who hasn't even started their form yet. Does that make sense? It only shows who's started or completed the form. Cash flow, we're going to go into that later. Contacts, oops, I got ahead of myself. Contacts, I'm not sure how much areas use contacts. It's a way to track kids using club cards. I think most areas are using more like your own Google spreadsheets, but that's available to you to add kids and parents and different contacts. Don't worry about driver customer admin, don't worry about employee managers. Giving in revenue reports, you can also find that in reports up here. I'm more likely to go here, reports, and it gives you a whole list of options. Growth planning software is GPS. You might remember hearing from me in newsletters in October and April. That's when you report your numbers, how many kids are going to club, the average number of kids, how many kids do your leaders know. That's when you use this app, growth planning software. When I send out a reminder of that, I send you a link that goes directly to it, but here's how you can find it Don't worry about mission security. Priority prospect list, I wish more people use this. It's not intuitive, but if you ever want an easy list of your donors month by month, contact me. I'm always trying to keep your list updated, and I can send you an Excel spreadsheet of what your list looks like. And then you should be familiar with staff volunteer roster and volunteers manager. They kind of go hand in hand. Staff volunteer roster is where you'll find out your list of leaders who have a staff resources account. Anybody meeting with kids should definitely have a staff resources account and be on this roster. And you'll also be able to see whether they completed their criminal background check, their faith and conduct form. If they're going to drive, you can see here whether they filled out their driver questionnaire. Volunteers manager is how you add those people. So when you have a new volunteer or a new committee member, you add them to staff resources by using volunteers manager. And when I send out follow-up information, I'll send you a PDF that shows what the other person sees when you add them to volunteers manager. They get an email, and I've made a PDF that shows you how you can send it to them to walk them through how to set up their account. And then YL Connect is coming. Right now, staff are using it. It's a Salesforce online platform for contacts and giving reports right now. I think in the next year or so, they're going to roll it out for volunteers also. So you'll be hearing more about YL Connect in the future. There are a couple other websites that I like that are not connected to staff resources, but they do have tons of Young Life stuff. And one of them is to go to Vimeo, which is kind of like a YouTube. And Young Life has their own channel. So vimeo.com/Young Life. And they have 313 videos. You'll see videos, everything from like just specific to New York or just specific to North Carolina, to videos about a variety of things, international camping. This is a fun webpage to explore, especially when you're getting ready for a banquet. You can look on here and see if you can find some fun, interesting videos that you could have somebody show as people are arriving. This is a really good thing to have, like 5 or 6 videos that you just show on a loop. Another website is something local to us. It's the Northwest Leader Training Blog. It's nwleadertrainingblog.com. Some leaders in Oregon, some very seasoned Young Life leaders in Oregon, created a training manual a few years ago, and it's all available online. And this is how you get to it. You go to Northwest Leader Training Blog, you click on training and resources, and then volunteer training, and it's the whole, all 10 modules are available, plus additional resources. So that's a great place when you're meeting with your leaders, you're looking for a topic to cover. Maybe in the fall, you would go over how to run campaigners, or how we're going to do club, or how we're going to do contact work. You can go here and pull up one of those, one of these modules and use it for your leader meeting. So that's also available to you. This is also available in hard copy too. So let me know if you want that, and I can connect with Ken or Chris and get copies of those to you also. Let's go to, man, that took me 16 minutes. Let me see what's next on my list. So next on my list is the first and third. I'm going to show you, this was our last first and third newsletter. It comes out on the first and third Mondays of the month. If you know somebody in your area who's not getting it, just have them email me, or you can email me, and I'll add them to the list. The first and third always starts with a devotional. Right now we're having volunteers write the devotional. And then important news to know. I try to leave some things on there if they're still relevant. Like right now, I still have some camp leader orientation. That's been on there since probably March, because every area needs to do it, and I didn't want it to fall by the wayside. And some things only appear once. Like this alternative camping opportunity in Europe, that will only appear once, and it won't be in the next one. But it's still good to review all these for every newsletter. After that, we just started a new feature, Did You Know, where I try to find things that a lot of even seasoned area directors don't know. And so I try to include that there. And then once a month, we do the best practices and we try to make it relevant to the time of the year. I often get newsletters and I put links to them there. Then you can see the calendar. And if you're wondering about, I do just the month. If you want to see more than a month, you can click on this, the regional calendar, and it'll take you to a Google Doc or Google spreadsheet, that's the regional calendar. The following year's calendar, September, October of the rest of the year, will come out in July. Some job postings, some career requests, a quote from Jim Rayburn, our founder, how to connect with me or Chris or Ken or other people who are at the regional level, and then helpful links down here. So build your own training manual. That's another version of a training manual that Young Life Nationals put out. And then N form for non-Young Life camping, I'll go over those. But these are different forms that you might need. Some of them only apply to staff, like health club benefit or man's allowance or climate growth worksheet. But some of them are relevant to you if you're looking. And then our core values at the bottom. Camping. So this, I don't have a lot to show you on my screen. Let's go to camping. But I can tell you that Young Life uses a lot of terms that are only happen with Young Life that you won't hear anywhere else. So a lot of them revolve around camping. So you'll hear things like, we need your A form, we need your 10-day call-in, we need your 24-hour call-in. These are all things that every Young Life camp uses. And you might be hearing murmurings about those and wondering like, okay, what am I supposed to do when that happens? So most of you are going to Washington Family Ranch. Diane Medina at camp, she runs everything related to camp trips. So she's a great resource. So there are two forms related to camping, the A form and the N form. And the A form is for regular Young Life camping. You're going to Washington Family Ranch or Malibu or Woodleaf. You'll have an A form. You're not expected to know where it is. Camp will send you the forms to fill out. And the A form is something that you want to list every person who is showing up at camp from your area. So it includes your leaders and your kids, and then if you had a bus driver staying at camp, which is not typical in the summertime, but anybody who's staying on the property, you want their legal name and what role they have, whether they're a camper or a leader. The N form is something that we're stressing more this year. If you have a camp that is not going to Young Life property, but you're permitted to do other kinds of Young Life camping, like going camping, going boating somewhere, going on a several-day hike or float down a river, or even we have one area that's going on a mission trip to Camp Attitude and helping out there. If it's 2 nights or more, and if there's a gospel proclamation during it, it's counted towards your camping numbers. And Young Life wants to know what kids are going to camp and what kind of camp. So there's another form called an N form. You don't need to totally remember it because you probably won't use it that frequently, but it's on the first and third, the N form for non-Young Life camping. It's just a simple form that you fill out listing the numbers of people that went and what you did. Then the next thing you'll hear about is the 10-day call-in. The 10-day call-in is an email that it's not actually a phone call. It used to be a phone call, but it's a form that camp will send you, and it'll talk you through directions. It's like a survey form, and they want to know, we're 10 days out now, what are your actual numbers of guys and girls and leaders and campers? And that helps them prepare for housing. And then if you've done Young Life camping before, you know that the day before, you're having kids call you up and say, oh, my friend's going to camp, can I go? And it's the day before, or you might be at the bus and somebody shows up and wants to go. Or you might have somebody has to cancel, they get sick at the last minute. And so camp asks for a 24-hour call-in, and that should be your closest to accurate number of kids and leaders you're bringing. So when you hear about those things, don't panic hearing about them. You'll receive something from camp helping guide you through them. You can also always ask me for help too. Yeah, Trisha.
Oh, yay. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Who usually does those forms?
Usually the trip leader. So your area should have designated a trip leader, and they're the person who will get the email. So typically they fill it out. If they get the email and they're like, oh, I'm written down as a trip leader, but actually my co-leader is the person with all the information, they can always forward the email to the other person and they can fill it out.
Okay, because several of us got that email and we were kind of like, who does this? We didn't know.
Yeah, it can just be anybody, but it should just be one person. Like, don't have multiple people fill something out. Yeah.
Okay.
Health forms. I talked a little bit about health forms. I think the most important thing is if you don't have access to it, email me and let me know and I can get you access. Tracking payments for camping. There's a few ways. You'll be receiving checks and cash from parents for camp. And those you want to make sure you mail them in just as you do other income processing payments, but make sure you write down who paid what. So before you send it into income processing, make sure you're writing down how much was paid towards what camper and track those. And then, and the reason I say that is because there are reports. So I can go to applications and then reports. Oops. And you can pull up a simple revenue report, which is here, a simple revenue report. And you put in your mission unit number. Let me see. Yeah, I can't really do that because of privacy, but it'll show you, it'll print up it'll give you like a PDF of payments, but they don't always say what kid the payment is for. Sometimes it's obvious because it's the same last name, but write it down before you send it into income processing, just in case it's a different last name and income processing doesn't always know who that payment was going to. So make sure you track that. The other place is when you do, most areas have a giving link where people can pay for camp online. And that's where you go to Camp Trip Manager. And this one I will show you. I did a Camp Trip Manager for our family camp. So I'll show you that one. You go to Camp Trip Manager. And then you can see what the camp was. Family camp. So I picked family camp from this year, and then you can see there's a tab called payments. If you go to the payments tab, it'll have a list of who has paid, and you'll see it's just like an outline, and I'm going to show you in cash flow too, but this is an outline. See how there's things that are indented? I'm going to close that. So see how there are indents, just like an outline that I opened and collapsed. You can see these are the online payments for family camp. There were other payments too that had no camp trip selected. You'll see on yours, it will say online payments for like your wildlife trip. So this is where you can find who paid, when they paid, and how much. When they fill out the forms to pay online, they also have to write a camper name. So those will definitely have the name of the camper who they're paying for. Let's see. And it's already almost 7:30. Man, this is a lot to go through. So Concur expense reports. I'm going to show you Concur really quick. I might just talk you through this one. So you create a report for each month. So I'm going to start my July report. So I'm just going to call it July 2019. Can anybody tell me, maybe Ken, can you tell everybody why do you only want to do one report per month? You have to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Oh, he's still, I'm going to translate for Ken. Ken just said only one per month because you get charged $5 for additional reports. So you want to make sure you include everything in one report. Good job, Ken. Great answer. So you want to make sure you include everything in one report. I already filed my June report, so here's my July report. I called it July 2019, and now this screen is showing all the available expenses for July that I could put in the report. So I'm going to click on all of them, and then I'm going to add them. Oh, I can't see it. Let me see if I can move you guys. I'm going to move it to my current report. And now we're going to move over here. So now they're in this report. Hopefully this isn't too confusing if you haven't done a Concur report before. But this right here is kind of like, it's wanting to know, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? But you pay attention to over here. You have your July report and your expenses here. If I click on one of these expenses, this is going to change. So I'm going to click on my Chipotle expense. And now it's asking me about this particular Chipotle expense. It was related to a leadership meeting I had. It was a meeting with an admin for training. So a lot of people ask me about business purpose. Business purpose should be, the IRS should be able to read this and know that it was ministry related. So I wouldn't just put meeting with Joan. It'd be like, well, is that just a friend of yours? Or, but I put meeting with an administrator for training. And it's obvious that that's a ministry related expense. And then let me see if I can make it down even more. And now that I have all the red fields completed, it's almost done, except I need to attach a receipt to it. You can see there's a little available receipts over here. I'm gonna pull them up, and I think I have my Chipotle receipt there. You can see I eat out a lot. This is Chipotle 1080, that was 1080. I can click on this little green arrow and attach it. I can see another tab appeared right here that says receipt image. So now that receipt image is attached to that expense. So now I've filled out my red categories. I attached a receipt, and I'm going to click save, and then I'm done with that one. I'm going to go to the next one. I'm not going to do it just for time, but I want you to pay attention to this because this is what we're going to go over next. Is look here at expense type, leadership meetings. When I click on this, it gives me all the different expenses, and guess what? All those expenses match up with cash flow. So when you fill out an expense report and then you look at cash flow, you'll see expenses matching up with those different categories. And that's how you create your budget, is you can see that like, oh, okay, our committee, we say once a quarter, we all go to Domino's for pizza. Then that's a leadership meeting expense. And then you'll see whoever pays for it files it that way on their expense report. And then you'll see in cash flow every quarter, you'll see that expense show up under leadership meetings and cash flow. Let me see, I can't see you guys if anybody's raising your hand. So if you do have a question, unmute yourself and you can interrupt me. I'm going to keep moving. So the next thing I want to show you is the list of expense reports. And I'm going to send you this list. Expense accounts. So this is something I'll send you that's also a list of all the different expense categories in cash flow and Concur and what typically goes under them. One of the most important ones is program. That's any kid work, contact work, club, and committee expenses. Committee actually could go under leadership meetings too, but anything you're doing with kids, so buying pizza for club, going to coffee with a kid, taking a couple kids out for lunch, those are all program expenses. The other typical one that a lot of people use is leadership meetings, and that would be any weekend retreats with your committee, any meetings that you have that's just your leaders, that you're doing training, things like that would go under leadership meetings. This is a great resource if you're not sure where to put something, of where to put it. So I'll send you that resource. And with that, let's go over to cash flow. Actually, I want to see you guys. I feel bad I can't. How do I see everybody? I'm not sure. Maybe that. There you are. So let's go over to cash flow. So I pulled up cash flow for an area that's not very active right now, but I wanted to choose them because they're a volunteer area, and so they don't have the compensation line on theirs. Normally this information is private, and so I'm going to keep things like donors private, but I think there's not enough activity here to have to hide anything. So in cash flow, you can see these 4 buttons up here corresponds to the outline of cash flow, how it's set up. So just like when you learned in school how to write an outline, how you had the main header and then everything indented in was under that main header, cash flow works the same way. So anything indented in is under this category, anything indented in at this level is under this category, and all those are indented in are under this category. This has 4 levels to it, and there are 4 buttons up here showing the 4 levels. So I can collapse it down to just the top level. And you can see it was this, and it had operating revenue, and then a bunch of stuff under it, and then operating expense, and a bunch of stuff under operating expense. But I'm gonna collapse all of those. So I have just operating revenue and just operating expense. I'm doing this because it makes it easier to explain these bottom lines. So if you look at December, the operating revenue was $186 they took in, and their spending was $677, which is not unusual. You'll probably, the longer you're here, you notice that there are some months that you take in more than you spend, and some months that you spend more, or you take in less than you spend. Overall, you want that to be in an even or positive direction, but it's not the end of the world if you have a month where you're spending more than you take in. That's normal. You can see here, they had this minus this is their revenue less expense is a negative number because they spent more than they took in. And that month, their ending cash balance in the bank was this, $16,250. And you can see the following month, they took in $103.75. They spent $370, which was a net loss of $266. And you can see this number dropped by $266.63. So the way you can look at it is this is what happened in the month, and this is what you have in your bank account. So revenue less expense is what happened every month. Ending cash balance is what's in your bank. Young Life has policies for what happens if this goes in the red, because every area is responsible for their own bank account. Even though you don't have your own individual local bank account, you still have a bank account within Young Life systems. And so there are things that fall into place if that goes into the red, into the negative. But if your ending revenue less expense goes in the red, that's something to keep an eye on if it's habitually going in the red. But it's not something that Young Life is watching, like Greater Young Life is watching. When you make your budget, so this area, when they made their budget previous year, their budget was divided by 12 months. So the average budget per month was $801. And so what Young Life does is they take this number, your ending cash balance in their bank, and they come up with a term called your estimated cash month. And that is if your budget, whatever your budget is, they divide this into this to see how many months would you last at your budget level if no more money came in. So a lot of small town areas are saving up for an area director. So it's not unusual to see numbers like this. Like an area keeps kind of stockpiling money to eventually have enough to get an area director or a mission staff or a direct ministry started. And so you'll see numbers like, we have a really small budget right now, $801. We have a lot of money in the bank. We're trying to save for an area director or a mission staff. And so right now, our cash months are in the 20s. Of course, if you hire somebody and say you're paying them $1,500 a month or $2,000 a month, this would change drastically. If that happens, this won't automatically change if you change your budget. We have to go to field accounting, and they can change it for us. Young Life has found that the healthiest staffed areas linger between 1 and 3 cash months. So saying that if no more money came in, that in about 1 to 3 months they would run out. They found that areas that are in that range actually have like the most active committee because they're kind of on the edge of things. People don't kind of sit back and coast, and they find that ministry is pretty healthy there. Let's see. I'm going to expand this a little bit, or expand it all the way and talk a little more about this. So you can see that there's gray fields and there's white fields. Income processing, even though there are other reports that we can look at and see who is a monthly donor, When income processing puts all the money in here, you'll see in your own cash flow, they always put it in other gifts. And sometimes I get questions about that, like, we know we have monthly donors. Why does everything always show up in just other gifts? And also, you might create your budget and have a budgeted amount for monthly gifts, monthly donors, but it's still all being dumped into other gifts. The cool thing about cash flow, some areas leave it like that. They're okay with that. If you did want to break it out and you're carefully tracking what your monthly donors are doing, you can pull up other reports to find out. And the good thing about this is you can write your own numbers in this, but you're never going to change the actual information. So there's no way to override actual information in cash flow, but you can edit the white fields. So let's look at February, and you can see that the contributions were $135. And let's say that of those, $75 was monthly donors. So I'm going to zero this one out. I can change it. There, I just changed it to 0. And then I'm going to add $75 in here. That was my monthly donors that month, was $75. But the actual giving was $135. I only put in 75. So the system actually added another line down here called unassigned amount. And it's telling me, wait a minute, you had $60 that you didn't add to any category. So it doesn't ever lose that money. It'll add it to an unassigned amount line. So let's say $60 was a one-time gift. I'll write 60 in here, and you're going to see this line will go away. So there's 60, and when I hit enter, there, that unassigned amount is now no longer there. So you can tailor white lines and don't worry about changing information or losing information. Some areas just leave it as other gifts and just kind of keep track of this number down here, how that's going. Let's go over to Campership. So this, they don't have an active camp trip this summer. Let me look at it for you. So you can see there's several different lines here that have amounts. So let's go to the summertime. So you can see here, camp trip is not as clean as cash flow. Cash flow has definite categories for income coming in and definite categories for expenses going out. Campership kind of combines it all. So camp contributions is donations. So this area had donations of $1,000 in May, $331 in June. Those are contributions, donations. Next line over is non-contribution camp, which is camp payment. So this is if people are paying for their kids for camp, it'll show up here. You can click on these little dollar signs for detail, which I'm not going to do because of privacy. But if you click on this little symbol, it will show you individual payments, but in cash flow, it won't show you names on the camper tab, on the Campership tab. So you can't click on details to see who paid what. For some reason, they don't put names in cash flow. You can look in Campership Manager and Revenue Reports for that. There are credit card processing fees when people pay by credit card. I'll go back to the other tab and show you that. I forgot about that. Camp is how much did camp cost? No, what is? Oh, camp is other expenses like your T-shirt. If you categorize anything in your Concur report to camp, it shows up here. And then transfers into and out of Campership is when that's when you might have been short, and operating will transfer into Campership, and it'll transfer from your operating tab into your Campership tab. It'll show up there. And then transfers from area to camp is paying for your trip. So you can see this area had a trip in June and a trip in July, and that's their payments to camp. And then the difference is how much is left in your Campership account. What happened here is they had some money transferred from operating to cover a deficit, and then they were just at 0. But then in the fall, you start taking in camp payments again, and it'll go up again. One thing I forgot to cover under revenue here is I went back to the main cash flow tab, and you can see like this is donations in $13.90. But then some people paid by credit card, so you'll see a credit card processing fee here, and so the net result was $1386.87. Oh, that's an old year. Sorry, let's go to the current year. There, is it back? Now can you? Yeah, sorry about that. So here, look at March. So 135 was what came in. There were no credit card processing fees. There were service charges taken out here. And then the net result was this 112. And that's the actual money that you have to spend out of your donation.
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
My report doesn't look like this. It's a different format. This Bob had, but I didn't have this one.
Oh, if you want to screenshot it and send it to me, I'll tell you why it looks different. What looks different about it?
This one's lined up nicely. Mine is not lined up nicely like this row. It's one down. I mean, it's off. It's off. And this looks like a more updated version or something.
Oh, yeah. Send me, either take a picture with your phone and text it to me, or screenshot it to me.
I'm trying to bring it up and it's not coming up. So I'm going to have to do it on this computer, but it does not. This is what Bob had, but I didn't have this.
Oh, okay. Yeah, send me a picture and I'll see. We might call the help desk and see if they can help too.
Okay.
So now is the time that you can take yourself off of mute, and I'll keep cash flow up in case you have questions about cash flow, but I'll take questions about anything at all. We'll try to end right at 8, but I'm available after if you want to stay longer. So I want to respect people's time too. So.
I had a question on Concur. Do we automatically have a login to that, or do we have to create an account, or how does that work?
Right. So you set up it's attached to a P card. So to get a P card, you go on Scout Resources and do something called Financial Principles Training, which I can send to you, and I'll show you. Hold on. Let me move everybody. I can see this. So on Financial Principles Training, you go through like a short training online, and then you send me your address. Here we go. How to get a P card. So everybody who's a leader should have done their faith and conduct and their background check. And then you do something additional called Financial Principles Training. I'll send you guys this welcome packet also. And then once you completed that, you email me with your legal name and your mailing address, phone, and email. And then I submit this to our P cards department, and then they'll send you an email, and the email will have instructions on how to set up your Concur report, or your Concur account, sorry. Once you set up your Concur account, you won't really, it's hard to learn how to do anything until you've actually had some expenses. And then once you've had some expenses, then either you can get together with Ken, since Ken's down there too, or I can always hop on a Zoom call with you, and we can go over how to do your first report. And it looks very similar to what I showed you a little bit ago. And sorry, I went over that kind of quick just for time. But once you have your first expenses, then you file your first report. And then the rhythm should be, you'll see when I send out a calendar every month, that you'll see they'll say that Concur reports are due on the 10th of every month for the previous month. The reason for that is so that, let's say you had expenses in May. If you file your report by June 10th, then those expenses will show up in May. It's not due to me or any, like, it's not a due date that you have to submit something to me that I'm watching, but it's helpful for you because it'll keep your expenses in the month that you spent them. Concur actually gives you 45 days to file an expense. So you could spend something on May 30th, and Concur is not going to bug you about it until July 15th. But then when they bug you about it, I'm sure some of you have gotten the email that says, hey, you have 5 days to submit this receipt or your card gets put on hold. But what I suggest is at the end of the month, within the first 10 days of the following month, you submit a report with all the previous month's expenses on it. That's why when I got on my Concur report, you could see I just had 2 June expenses. That's because I put all my May expenses on a May report, and then actually now I realize I called it July. I should have called it June. It should have been a June 2019 report, but I put just my June expenses on my June report. And that's where if you file an extra report in a month, you end up getting charged $5. It's much easier to just put every expense on one report. Another question I get sometimes is somebody didn't have their P card with them, or the limit was not high enough and they were in an urgent situation. Like I've had people go to Costco, or say like the post camp barbecue, and they spent $400, but their card limit was only 100, and they in the spur of the moment put it on their personal card. In a case like that, I think it's worth the $5 to file an extra report to get reimbursed right away. And that if you're ever not sure to do with that, you can always call me or call Ken. But there's a way on Concur to add a report or add an expense not connected to your P card. And the default is that, Concur sees that and says, oh, okay, you want to be reimbursed for this. And it even adds a little out-of-pocket note on it that you'll see. So hopefully Brendan, does that answer your question?
A little bit, and Ken might have to clarify with me exactly what my role entails, because I'm still learning. I don't think I actually need a P card for expenses that I'm going to have. He had just mentioned something about the treasurer's responsible for like approving expenses or doing something like that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. That's a little bit simpler. That you still need to go through this, going through financial principles training. And then there's also an approver video. I think it's not part of that. I think it's separate, but I think you might find it when you're going through financial principles training. And then we get you set up same way. You email me all this, and I'll get you set up as just an approver.
Great.
Your job is the system will send you an email and just say, hey, there's a report waiting for your approval. And then you and I can talk more about what it means to approve. If there's stuff on the video that doesn't make sense, or I might have some things to add to it also.
Okay, great. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure. Anybody else? Other questions? No? Ken, how'd I do? Anything, Ken, anything you were hoping I'd cover that I didn't?
I have a question about the giving. You were talking about the service charge on the regular account, 17%. But there's no service charge when the gift is given to Campership.
Right.
Correct?
Yes.
What if money is transferred from the general account to Campership?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you either
paying that 17% on that money?
Yeah. So if your area voluntarily transfers money over to Campership, then the 17% is returned. So you're not charged 17%. So it's actually like the money is added back in and transferred over to Campership. What I would recommend is, rather than transfer money over, to try to figure out how much you're going to need to transfer over, because it's not unusual to run short in your Campership account and to have to transfer money from operating. But I think it's preferable to let Campership go into deficit and then have just the actual amount needed for Campership be transferred over. And then the money is returned. The reason I say that is that Young Life will always allow operating funds to be transferred to Campership, but there are pretty strict rules about transferring Campership money back to operating. If your Campership went into deficit, and let's say you're not doing great in your operating account, and then you had a lot of kids that just could not come through with their full camp payments, and you have a pretty significant Campership deficit, Young Life is going to, at the end of the summer, automatically transfer from your operating into Campership, regardless of how operating looks. So let's say you had $1,000 in operating and you're 800 short on Campership, they're still going to transfer 800 into Campership and leave you with 200 in operating. But they have a rule that over the next 2 years, if you get a boost in your campership account of 800 or more, you can transfer that 800 back into operating. Does that make sense? So like whatever they made you transfer to campership, you're allowed to transfer back over the next 2 years. And that way, let's say in August you were short that 800, but some of the money that you knew was coming in for camp was coming in September, then when that 800 comes to campership, you can transfer it back to operating. Yeah, the reason I say not to try to guess and try to front load your campership account is that they're going to transfer any shortage afterwards anyway, and there's no penalty for going short in campership and allowing just the right amount to be transferred over. Is that helpful? Does that make sense? I'm getting a lot of blank looks.
Sorry, I lost you for a second.
Oh, that's okay.
I'm back.
Did that, Ken, was that a helpful answer? Yeah, cool. Well, we're at 5 minutes to 8. Any other questions you can think of? Is there anything, how about this, if there's no questions, is there anything you'd like covered in a future call?
It's possible our budget isn't fully submitted. If it shows red, what kind of thing do we get back?
Yeah, so that's a good I'll go over the budget timeline a little bit. So there was the March 31st deadline to submit your budget to me.
May 31st.
Or May 31st, sorry. And that, yeah, you were actually 3 months, no, I'm just kidding. So May 31st was the deadline to get your budgets back to me. There was nobody that I was answering to. So sometimes I have a deadline where if you don't get it to me, somebody's coming after me that I haven't handed something in. That May 31st deadline was just a deadline between me and you. The actual deadline for financial services is in early August. But we set the May 31st deadline because a lot of the areas, people are gone over the summer. Staff have assignments, people are gone at camp. Usually it's harder to get committees together, things like that. So the May 31st is a good deadline to make sure things are done. If you went past May 31st, I'm not worried about it because I'm still trying to get the time in my day to start going through areas' budgets to get back to areas with questions. So Trisha, I actually haven't noticed that you hadn't handed it in yet. I know we talked about it like a week ago, but I wasn't like watching for it or anything. So now, June and July, we have time to look at the budgets again. And I'm going to go through each budget go through them pretty carefully. It's one of my favorite parts of my job is actually doing all the budget stuff. So I go through them pretty carefully, and I will likely get back to your area with questions. I have questions about like, hey, you didn't spend anything in this category last year, but now you put something in there. Can you tell me more about that? Or numbers aren't adding up quite right. When you have something in the red, remember what I talked about where you have your bank account that has your actual amount?
Right.
That's more important than what's happening month to month. It's the same thing
okay.
every year. So I'll have some areas where they have $20,000 left in the bank in September, and their budget might be, we're planning on spending $8,000 more than we are taking in next year. That's our budget. It's running $8,000 short, but they started the year with $20,000 in the bank. That $8,000 short is okay because they're still left with $12,000 in the bank at the end of the year. So if you see something red, as long as the red amount is your revenue less expenses, and as long as the red amount is not bigger than what you have in the bank at the start of the year, then you're fine.
Okay.
And actually, it won't let you approve it back to me if that's not the case. So, yeah, it'll tell you, it'll kick it back to you and say your numbers won't allow the budget to be approved. Yeah.
Okay.
It used to be, I'm happy they changed it. It used to be that every year's budget had to be in the black. So it could be like an area had like 30,000 in the bank, and they could not have a budget that ran $5 short for that year. Now they changed it, where if you have money in the bank, your budget for that year can run short as long as it doesn't make your bank account go dry. Yeah. Well, we're at 8:01, so I think we should wrap it up. But thanks everybody for being on the call. You can always email me or text me more questions, and I'll send out everything I showed you on the screen. I'll send out to you in an email tomorrow. Sound good?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds
All right.
great. Thanks for the help, Patty.
Yeah. So I'll send stuff out tomorrow. And thanks to everybody for being on the call. It's great seeing
All
faces.
right.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, Patty.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.